Okay, this is chapter 56 of The Night Singer. 56. Rebecca watched as Molly wolfed down her cereal. Last night, her daughter had announced that she wanted to go back to school, that she missed her friends, especially Vera. Petrie had immediately said that he thought it was a good idea, but Rebecca was skeptical, and that same uncertainty had forced her out of bed when her alarm went off this morning. "Have you changed your mind?" she asked. She wanted nothing more than for Molly to say yes, but the girl shook her head eagerly. Molly was wearing her cat dress, the same one she had put on for the barbecue last Tuesday. "I have to go to school so they don't forget about me." "They won't forget you that quickly." Was this about Joel? Did Molly feel like she had already started to forget him? Rebecca didn't dare ask and glanced over at his empty chair. She could just picture Joel hunched over his usual cheese sandwiches. She could even hear the sound of him chewing. But when she tried to remember how he smelled, it was the baby scent that came back to her, that sweet mix of talc and milk that had lingered for so long. Axel had talked about the baby and toddler years in his awful interviews, about how fantastic Joel had been. Rebecca hadn't been able to resist reading them. He was now the poor grieving father who had been falsely accused of murdering his own son, and the media loved him. It was like they couldn't get enough. Just last night he had been on a live news broadcast. The only thing he had said about Rebecca was that they didn't get along, though he had made it perfectly clear that it was all her fault. "But I want to play with Vera," said Molly. Petrie popped his head around the kitchen door. "You can. Run up and brush your teeth and I'll take you down there." He avoided looking at Rebecca. They had barely spoken since their fight on Saturday, but the silence between them felt different now. Not quite still, but utterly draining. Though he was flat out at work with his new renovation job, he had stayed home to take his daughter to school, and Rebecca loved him for that. But she also realized what she was most afraid of, the moment when Petrie came home and they were left alone, without anyone to upset with their shouting. Like her, he had struggled to sleep last night, but she hadn't asked why, hadn't wanted to dredge up anything that couldn't be stopped. In the end, he had drifted off, and she had lain awake in the darkness, listening to the sound of his breathing. Molly came down the stairs and gave Rebecca a pleading look. "I want Mommy to take me." "Okay." Rebecca got up, but Petrie stopped her in the doorway. His eyes were locked on the doorframe to the right of her. "Are you sure?" he asked. She nodded, though she wasn't. Neither that Molly should be going to school, nor whether she would be able to handle bumping into any of the other parents or teachers. But she also knew that she couldn't say no to Molly. As they left the house, Molly reached out and took her hand. It was clear she was nervous. Rebecca glanced down to check her clothes. She had managed to put on a clean top and a pair of jeans at least. Her own shoes this time, too. It suddenly struck her that she hadn't washed her hair in several days, and she raised her hand to the back of her head and tried to comb through her greasy locks. Her irritation with Petrie reared its head again. Why hadn't he said anything? Spotting a few people up ahead, Rebecca slowed down. She didn't want to catch up with them. "What's wrong?" asked Molly. "Nothing," she said with a smile. They reached the schoolyard, and to Rebecca's relief, Vera was already there. She ran over to Molly and hugged her, dragging her off to play. There were still 10 minutes before the first class of the day. "Bye, Mommy," Molly shouted over her shoulder. Rebecca waved, but she had no voice to call back with. Instead, she walked over to Isaac, the teacher she trusted most. It was obvious he liked his job and that he took the children seriously. He had only been at the school for a few years, so he had never taught Joel. Rebecca didn't need to say a word. "I'll keep a close eye on Molly today," he told her, "and I'll call you if anything comes up." "Thanks. I'm so sorry for your loss. I know how hard it is to lose someone." "Thanks," she said again. Rebecca quickly turned away, a knot of tears like a hedgehog in her chest. Hodgehog. What? Oh, hodgehog was what Molly had called them when she was younger. Rebecca felt like she had just walked straight into the middle of a highway and left Molly there. She desperately wanted to turn back, grab her daughter, and run, but she didn't. With every step, the knot in her chest seemed to loosen slightly, and Rebecca even managed to say hello to the people she passed. She walked slowly because she didn't want Petrie to be there when she got home. Fixing the problems in their relationship was more than she could handle right now. It struck her that she should have asked Isaac who he had lost. Maybe Ulrika knew, though she likely would have said something if she did. Ulrika loved gossiping about everyone in town. When she reached the house, Rebecca saw that Petrie's car was still parked in the driveway and felt an urge to turn around. But where would she go? Perhaps she could sneak into the studio and wait there until he was gone. Thoughts of the studio made her glance over at Gabriel and Ulrika's house, where she saw Gabriel sitting on the steps. He turned away from her, but she noticed that his eyes were red and puffy. A small part of her wanted to go over and ask if he was okay, though there was a risk he would simply start whining about his and Ulrika's problems. Could Gabriel have finally confessed to the affair? It all felt so stupid now. She didn't know what she had ever seen in him. The despair she had felt after Gabriel dumped her was nothing compared to the utter darkness the loss of Joel had thrown her into. Gabriel was nothing to her. He never had been, and she didn't even have the energy to be angry at him for building a castle in the sky and tempting her inside. But how could she make Petrie understand that? Did she even want to? The answer came to her like a sudden hot flush. She had experienced them occasionally while she was pregnant with Molly. Yes, there was nothing she wanted more. Petrie had never deceived her. He had always been there for her and put up with her mood swings. On top of that, he loved their daughter more than anything. She wouldn't be able to move forward without him. Petrie opened the door and stepped outside. The determined look on his face scared Rebecca, making the certainty she had just felt falter. After a moment's hesitation, she moved toward him. "We need to talk," he said. "There's something I need to tell you."